How are we doing, everyone? Welcome back to another preview of NFL 2023 on the Spunky Spectrum Sports Network. I am Alex, coming back for my not so weekly, but we're going to try and make it that way starting now. Contribution. We are less than a month into NFL preseason, and it's coming right around the corner, and I can't wait. But of course, to introduce the man himself, Mr. Dillon, how are you, sir?
Oh, I'm great, Alex, because we're talking NFC and AFC South today, which means, based on my shirt, we're talking about at least one team we know.
Yeah, we've definitely two interesting divisions coming up into the new year. A lot of changes on both sides. And a good day to talk about these teams because of a couple breaking news stories developing on the AFC side of things. But we'll get into that shortly. Before we get too deep in, make sure you follow us on all the social media channels on YouTube, on Spotify, and Apple Music if you like listening rather than watching. But other than that, I think we're ready to get into it.
Also, the Big D podcast will have a couple Open Championship previews tomorrow and Tuesday for your golf fans. So I'm debating whether or not I should wear a tie tomorrow.
Got to put a poll in the comments section just to get the people's opinion. But Dylan, he's always spotlighting every major sport. He's got episodes coming out from everything from tennis to golf to football to basketball to everything in between. So no matter what sport you follow, no matter what sport you like, the Spunky Spectrum Sports Network is the place to be.
Yeah, so we'll talk about NFC South first, Alex. Boy, this division change. I'm used to seeing Tom Brady and Drew Brees in the division, and right now, I don't see I don't see a quarterback in in this division.
Yeah, I mean, there's one that came in that can potentially make some moves, but it's definitely a different NFC South than we've been used to. It's crazy to think that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won the Super Bowl 2.5 years ago, and all of a sudden they're looking like not the hottest team in the division. But we can get to that shortly. Where do you want to start?
Well, let's start just up the road from me and across the state from you with the Bucks. Obviously, Tom Brady gone from Tampa. Baker Mayfield potentially looking like the star in Tampa. I have no idea what to expect from this team because, to be honest, I think the Buccaneers should try and tank and get themselves in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes because you imagine going from Tom Brady to Caleb Williams. That'd be a nice handoff, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's you definitely make a good point there. I think the Buccaneers are in for a bit of a long season this year. It's not the greatest division, but unfortunately, I just don't think obviously, to make a run in the NFL these days, you need a top tier quarterback, and I think Baker Mayfield has proven over his career that he's not the guy to take a team, into the playoffs or let alone deep into the playoffs, let alone making a Super Bowl run. So they've got some names there. Obviously, the receiver core is still solid, but it's just not enough firepower to really be able to make any moves this year. And unfortunately for the Bucks, I think they have a couple decent names enough left over from those Super Bowl teams that it might limit them from getting a top tier draft pick. I really see them, kind of middle of the pack. They'll win a couple games just based on some talent alone. Maybe some early, maybe squeeze a couple early games out with maybe some northern teams coming down to Florida and having to deal with that September heat. But other than that, there's really not a high ceiling for this team and a pretty low floor. I could easily see them in the end of 5 to 8 win range, and that might even be a little generous.
5 to 8 wins? You mean Tampa Bay franchise day? Rookie days when the Tampa Bay Buccaneers could barely win a game.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's probably a little generous. I think closer to the 5 than the 8. Remember, we still we play 17 games now, so it's an 8-8. There's no such thing as an 8-8 record these days. 8 wins is still a losing record, but
You could go 8-1 now.
you could. That's true, but I mean, Baker Mayfield, he's gonna score some touchdowns just throwing it up to Mike Evans. That's going to happen. Chris Godwin, they've got some talent on the team. Like I said, What's that?
Mike Evans.
Yeah, that's what I started with. They'll definitely score some points in some games. It's just with Baker Mayfield, as I kind of mentioned at the top end of this, he doesn't have the talent to take a team into playoff contention or really any sort of contention whatsoever. So, and it all starts with the quarterback position. They've obviously got some good pieces on defense that really contributed to their Super Bowl run a couple years back, but it's just not enough. Especially there's some loaded teams in the NFC. It's not a great division, which is another reason why I give them a couple extra wins. But it's just it's a long way looking up for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this year.
Anybody you like any young guys you like on this team? Because this one I would like Rashad White. I mean, we didn't see a lot of him because of Lenny Fournette last year, but I'm intrigued by what White could do. Obviously, with a quarterback downgrade from the GOAT to Baker, things could get interesting, but I want to see what Rashad White can do.
Yeah, Rashad White is definitely he's a young stud, like you said. Leonard Fournette last season was taking a lot of his touches, and we didn't get a good look. And obviously, with Tom Brady being there, they're not going to run the ball too often. But he's definitely a young player to watch. When you mention young players, he was definitely the guy who popped up in my mind. But I just think it's going to be a bit of a boring football team this year. It's not really a team I'm going to be paying too closely attention. Obviously, being in the NFC, and it's a mediocre. I mean, I guess for fantasy purposes, Mike Evans is always going to be in the talks there as probably a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, maybe even flex option this year, just because there's so much talent at the wide receiver position. But it's just there's not a lot of you take the GOAT out of Tampa, and it's looking right back into the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that we haven't seen relevance since 2002. So Rashad White's definitely a good shout as far as young players to watch, but there's a lot more teams with a lot better young talent that I'm going to be keeping my eyes on this year.
Let's just say this: when the Bucks bring out their creamsicle uniforms, that might be the most exciting part of their season.
Yeah, it'll be nice to see it back. I know a lot of people, especially Bucks fans, have been calling for it for years. So it'll be nice. It's always kind of weird to me when teams want to see throwback uniforms back to the days when their teams weren't very good. Which obviously, the creamsicle uniforms for the Bucks. I mean, that was some of the lowest points of their franchise, but they are nice jerseys. So I don't blame the fans for wanting to see them. Hopefully they don't produce as poorly as they did back when they actually won. But let's move on. Let's move on up out of the state of Florida, and let's jump over. Still stick on the East Coast with the Carolina Panthers. A big move made out of Carolina in this year's 2023 draft, taking Bryce Young with the first overall selection in the 2023 draft. Obviously, I think we all know that they moved on from Christian McCaffrey last year, sent him to the Bay Area. What do you see out of the Panthers? They're obviously a young team. There's a lot of question marks as far as what Bryce Young will do in his rookie year, but they brought in some talent. What do you see out of the Panthers this season?
I think the Carolina Panthers are going to win the NFC South.
Wow, that is a bold statement, Dylan. That is not what I expected you to say at all. You're gonna have to explain on that a little bit more. You like Adam Thielen that much?
No, I don't. But I love me Bryce Young. I think Bryce Young's the best quarterback in the division as a rookie.
Wow.
Sorry, Derek Hall, but Bryce Young's better. Because I saw Bryce Young play a ton in college, and he could make throws that few other college quarterbacks I've ever seen make. I mean, what he did, and yes, Alabama is known as wide receiver U. Alabama and Ohio State are known as wide receiver U. Well, he didn't play with the top wide receivers this past year, and yet he was making plays. And what I see him, yes, Bryce Young's small, he's undersized, doesn't have a big arm, the most mobility, did get hurt. But this guy's a winner. He's got it up here. And what I see with him is someone capable of picking up an offense and winning right away. And Frank Wright there, and Frank Wright being back in Charlotte, the Colts are going to regret getting rid of him. But frankly, playing the position, and not just playing the position in that city will give Bryce Young huge confidence. Miles Sanders, very good addition. And one guy I'm intrigued, John Mingo, a young rookie wide receiver. I think Mingo could be a very interesting guy. Of course, DJ Chark. I have no idea what to expect from Adam Thielen. He's like 95 years old, but who cares? I think Carolina's got really good young defense. And Bryce Young, if he doesn't have to throw the ball 50 times a game, if he can throw the ball off play action, use his legs, find the easy completion, I think the Carolina Panthers can win this wonky division.
I mean, that's definitely a bold take, Dylan. I hear what you're saying. However, I don't agree with it. One thing
you never agree with what I say.
It's very true. Sometimes I really feel like I should listen to you more, but on this one, I don't know if I can hold up to it. The big thing, obviously the first thing that stood out to me was you were talking about Bryce Young, quarterback from Alabama. Alabama quarterbacks have not always been the most productive in the NFL.
And whose team has got a quarterback from Alabama?
See, Dylan, you got to listen to me because that's exactly where I'm going. The things you mentioned when you were describing Bryce Young: undersized, injury history, not very mobile. Those are the exact same reasons why you hate on a Mr. Tua Tagovailoa. You say Tua is injury prone, he's too small, he can't move in the pocket. Everyone says he can't throw the deep ball, which he significantly disproved last season. Just the same, I mean, it's the exact same points that you make about why you don't like Tua Tagovailoa, and now you're coming on the flip side saying the exact opposite about Bryce Young. I like Bryce Young as a quarterback. I have some concerns. You're going to have some growing concerns as a rookie in the NFL. You very rarely see rookie quarterbacks in the NFL blow up. Look at Trevor Lawrence. Look at Josh Allen. Took them both a couple years. Obviously, Urban Meyer didn't help the Trevor Lawrence situation, which I know is what you would come back to that with. But it's a young team. It's a new head coach. It's a new system. Yes, they have some talent. Yes, they're going to win some football games. But DJ Chark, Adam Thielen, Miles Sanders, those aren't names that are making me jump out of my seat. Bryce Young could be better than expected as a rookie quarterback, but there's two other teams in the NFC South that have more experience, more history, and more talent than the Carolina Panthers. Bryce Young could come out swinging as a rookie. I still don't even think. And yes, they do have some nice young talent on the defensive side of the ball. J.C. Horn's a stud. Brian Burns is obviously a great player as well. But it's just too young of a team. It's a team that I don't see is going to be able to have that chemistry and really be able to win the football games that make a difference to be able to win that division. They're a team that's exciting. They're a team that I think has a bright future, but I don't think that this is the season where they're going to be able to put all the pieces together. I see them finishing above Tampa. I have Tampa finishing fourth in the division. I actually have Carolina finishing third, but I can't see the Carolina Panthers winning this division.
Panthers have the best coach, best quarterback in the NFC South. Book it.
I disagree. Let's move on. Where are we going next, Dylan?
We're going to take a trip down to Bayou Country, where the New Orleans Saints are.
So the New Orleans, yeah.
Jameis, bye-bye. In comes Derek Hall from the Raiders. I never thought Derek Hall would be a New Orleans Saint, but obviously Hall is probably the biggest name as a quarterback in this division. But then this team's got all kinds of question marks. Will Alvin Kamara finally be suspended? Will Michael Thomas actually stay healthy and play more than one snap a season? And then will the Saints actually have enough depth? Because seemingly, I don't know how Mickey Loomis keeps the Saints afloat with them in salary cap hell year after year. But what do you see from the Saints this year with Derek Hall now replacing James/Andy Dalton?
I like the Saints this year. I think the Saints are in a toss-up to win the division with the other team that we haven't mentioned yet. It's Derek,
I think you're full of hooey.
I think that you mentioned that the Carolina Panthers have the best quarterback in the division, and I think it's pretty obvious to say that Derek Carr is the best quarterback. I mean, obviously things didn't go very well in Vegas, but I don't think that that was necessarily Derek Carr's fault. He's a good, experienced quarterback. He's better than people give him credit for. I think he's an underrated quarterback in the league. He had a lot of drama going on with Devontae Adams in Vegas, and the Vegas Raiders left Derek Carr out to dry at the end of last season. They completely disrespected him for what he had contributed to the franchise. Obviously, it wasn't a Super Bowl or anything like that, but he put consistent at the very least quarterback play, for those Vegas Raiders, and they just let him out to dry by the end of the season. He didn't even get a chance to say farewell to the fans who have been supporting him. I think that Derek Carr is going to come into the New Orleans Saints with a chip on his shoulder. He's got one of the most talented young receivers in the NFL with Chris Olave that he'll be able to throw to. Again, you made the point about Mike Thomas, obviously. We'd like to see him just as from a talent standpoint be able to play this season because we've seen in the past that Michael Thomas has the potential to be one of the best receivers in the league, even if you call him a slant, a slant vulture, if you will. But they've got, whether the Alvin Kamara situation, however that unfolds, is going to be a big determinant on the result of the Saints season this year. But they brought in one of my favorite RB2s in the whole NFL in Jamal Williams. And yes, Jamal Williams, he's a character, and people think of him as a goal line back, but he's so great in that goal line back role. I mean, it's no question. I mean, there's I don't care how good of a goal line back you are, to be able to score two rushing touchdowns in how many games last season. I mean, it just seemed like he was the plug and play flex running back or RB2 in fantasy football last season. If you lost a running back to injury in fantasy, I was perfectly fine letting Jamal Williams into my starting lineup last season. I loved him in Detroit. I think he's going to come into a very similar role in New Orleans, obviously depending on how the Alvin Kamara situation plays out. But I think the Saints are happy to have Jamal Williams as their RB1 for however long Alvin Kamara is out, if he is indeed out. So, with Chris Olave, obviously Alvin Kamara is a talent. It just depends on how much he can play. And Derek Carr coming in with a chip on his shoulder. I don't think the Saints are going to go anywhere crazy, but it's not a very good division. I think that one of three teams could potentially win this division, and it's a tough one to predict, but I think that the New Orleans Saints have everything they need to be able to pull.
I think there's one problem that's going to hold back the Saints from winning the division this year. I don't like Dennis Allen as the head coach.
Yeah.
He's not good with Derek Hall in Oakland. And to be honest with you, I think the Saints could have won the division last year if Sean Payton had been there and not Dennis Allen. But I see him as way below average coach. And the Saints don't have a lot of depth.
Yeah.
And especially on defense. And that's an old defense to begin with. And I just wonder if the Saints have an injury bug, things could get really ugly for them. Plus, Derek Hall's going to have huge expectation because he's going to solve the mix, but learn a new offense. And I think the Saints just don't look the same without Sean Payton. Could they be a wild card, especially in the NFC? Yes, but will the Saints win the NFC South this year? No.
I mean, I don't think it's necessarily fair calling out the injury bug just because it's not even preseason yet. Any team and any player in any conference in any division can get the injury bug. I mean, yes, I get the depth point, but you just never know. I mean, the injury bug can strike anyone. They could go the full season without losing a starter. They could go the full season, and have 11 offensive players end up missing games. It's the most unpredictable thing in sports, injuries, and I don't like basing my predictions. I have to just look at roster and look at talent, because at the end of the day in the NFL, yes, you need to have the depth and you need to have the full pieces across the team, but at the end of the day, you can win football games with talent. We saw the Minnesota Vikings do it last year in those one-score games. They won those games with talent. It's not play calling. It's not coaching. It's Kirk Cousins throwing the ball to Justin Jefferson and him making ridiculous plays to win football. games. And at the end of the day, I think the Saints do have one of the most talented rosters in the NFC South. And because it's a mediocre division, I have to go on that just based on what I can see coming up into this season. I think you make good points on the defensive side of the ball. I think, they don't have one of the best head coaches in the league, but I just think if the Saints can put it together, I think they have some very winnable games just in their division alone. And then, the rest is just depending on how their talent plays. But I like Derek Carr. I love Jamal Williams. And, if Alvin Kamara can avoid too significant of a suspension, that's a really nice 1-2 running punch. Well, with obviously, of course, as I mentioned, Chris Olave being one of the best young receivers in the NFL. But it's time to move on. We've got one more team left in this division before we flip over to the American Football Conference. And I think, to be honest, the Atlanta Falcons might be one of the most interesting teams to watch in the whole NFC South this year. But I will hold my reservations until the end. I want to hear your thoughts on the Atlanta Falcons, Desmond Ridder and company.
I think the Falcons might have the widest range of expectations because some may see them as a 4 or 5 win team, others may see them as a 9-10 win potential division winner and get in a home playoff game. But this season's going to come down to Desmond Ridder because in the last 3 drafts, the Falcons have gone all offense in the first round. They've gotten, let's see, who did they get? Who was the Falcons' first round pick in 2021?
That would have been Mr. Kyle Pitts.
Correct. Who was Atlanta's first round pick in 2022?
Had to have Desmond Ridder, Drake London, one of the two. Drake London.
And who did the Falcons take for the number 8 pick in April?
Desmond Ridder.
Bijan Robinson.
Bijan Robinson. That's right. Sorry. I was on a cruise during the draft. I have a pass.
What? You on like more cruises than I'm on vacations. I take one a year. If that.
I had a fun year this year.
But the Falcons have gotten 3 skilled players on offense. Show me something, Desmond Ridder. If you show me you're a top 10, 12 quarterback, the Falcons can absolutely win this division. But if not, Atlanta's going to get itself a quarterback next year.
Yeah,
we know what Arthur Smith wants to do. He wants to run the ball. They didn't get Bijan Robinson to
be a decoy.
They have him as a wide receiver. They got him to be like Christian McCaffrey kind of running back. So he can be that playmaker. He can be a playmaker whether running or catching the ball. London, Pitts, Falcons have got enough pieces. They just need a competent quarterback play.
Yeah. And it goes back to what I was saying at the top of the segment. I think they're going to be one of the most interesting teams to watch this season just because we can watch this young team really put the pieces together and shock a lot of people, or we can see a project that doesn't work out. And obviously, like you said, they'll be in the quarterback market coming up next season. It does all rely on Desmond Ridder. But, you just take a look at some of these names that they brought in. Desmond Ridder, obviously, he's a question mark. He's got a lot to prove coming into this season, and he really is make or break for the Atlanta Falcons. But, Bijan Robinson, he was one of the most talked about offensive weapons coming into the draft this offseason. They still have Tyler Algier, who showed some flashes last season. Drake London, obviously, is another one of those young guys like Chris Olave that really have been stepping it up, still have some ways to go, but he's very talented on the offensive side of the ball. Kyle Pitts, he's been one of the most disappointing fantasy football players, I think, in recent history, and really just offensive skill players in general in recent history. The moves he made, the waves he made at University of Florida, had everyone thinking that he was going to be the next big thing at the tight end position, and he just hasn't shown it in the NFL. But what better time to really figure things out and get that light clicked than when you're joined by a Bijan Robinson, having Drake London, having Desmond Ridder step into his own if he is able to do that. And then you look on the defensive side of the ball. They had a pretty bad defense, to say the least, but they made some moves. They brought in Jeff Okudah. They brought in Jesse Bates, Bud Dupree. And, you say, okay, those are young guys, talented, but where's the veteran presence? They bring in Calais Campbell, who's been running defensive lines for as long as these guys have been alive, it sure feels like back to your Jacksonville Jaguars days. I know you know him very well. He had
Second,
that stint in Baltimore, and it was talks about retire, but he's going to come in and he's going to mentor some of these young bucks on the Atlanta defense. I'm not saying that they're going to go on a playoff run, that they're going to be one of the best teams in the NFC, but I think they're going to be a fun team to watch. There's a lot of pieces there. There's a lot of development there, and it's going to be really interesting to see if those guys, can challenge each other, because you have a locker room of talent and young talent who are all trying to grow and really find their place in the NFL. And what better way than to have these guys really pushing each other and pushing themselves to be able to take that next step and be, productive NFL players. And, it's a tall task because of the youth there. But like I said, if these guys can put things together and really, take that next step forward and prove that they can, be sustainable NFL talent, it could be a fun team to watch. It's definitely a big question mark. It could, like you said, it could go crash and it could crash and burn, and Atlanta be in the quarterback market next year, or they could figure things out. We could see the Kyle Pitts that we saw at UF. Bijan Robinson can be the guy that everyone kind of thinks and expects him to be, and Desmond Ridder can prove why he's supposed to be the franchise quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, they moved on from Matt Ryan. They have to have someone take his place, and I think Desmond Ridder thinks he can be the guy, and I'm excited to see if he can prove it to the rest of us.
by the way, the Falcons could be a team you want to shoot out against, because with that defense, I'm not sure the Falcons are going to necessarily be number one in defense.
Yeah. I mean, they definitely have some work to do, but they at least they made some moves. They added some pieces. It shows that, they're really obvious. I mean, they know that their defensive unit was not very good last year, and at least they're making moves to try and make something happen. It's, again, it's a team of question marks, but I think they have the potential to at least surprise a couple people this year. But I think that pretty much covers it. You want to go through NFC South rankings, or do you think we kind of covered that already?
No, we're going to do it we're going to give both of the division winners at the end.
All right, so let's move on to the AFC. The AFC South obviously is home to your local favorite team. You want to start with them or leave them to the
end? You can decide.
All right. Let's go with the team who had the most breaking news as of today. I'm sorry, your Jacksonville Jaguars did get overshadowed in the breaking news department.
What? Wait! We signed everything up, dude.
Hey, I mean, yes, it's a great lockdown move for the Jacksonville Jaguars, but I don't think it's as good as the Tennessee Titans bringing in DeAndre Hopkins. There was a bunch of teams fighting for his services. Obviously, the New England Patriots were were in the running, and I think a lot of Patriots fans thought that they were going to have that. But DeAndre Hopkins decides he is taking his talents to Nashville, to Tennessee, and he's going to be the newest member of the Titans, where in the past, the Tennessee Titans have looked like the franchise where great receivers have gone to, maybe less than expected, and have their careers kind of come to an end, if you're willing to go that far. But what do you see out of the Tennessee Titans this season?
First off, even though I am a Jags fan and a Titan hater, I love Mike Vrabel was the head coach, but I don't know what to expect. I mean, Tannehill's getting up in age. Derrick Henry just keeps running the ball, but I don't know when the wheels are going to fall for him. Well, I like Traylon Burks. I like who is the tight end, Chika Kwanjo. But the Titan offensive line was a mess last year, and yeah, they did some piece through the draft, but I don't know what to make. Yes, DeAndre Hopkins will make Tannehill better, but I mean, my favorite gets the most out of his team, and I mean, Tennessee will be a well-coached team, well-disciplined team. They'll probably be around 500. But while everybody is trying to get better quarterback play, faster wide receivers, I don't know if Tennessee's made enough moves. Yes, getting Hopkins will help. But DeAndre Hopkins what he was in Houston, even first year or two in Arizona? I don't know. Plus, I mean, you look at Titans. I mean, where would Ryan Tanner rank in AFC quarterbacks right now?
Yeah, I think he's definitely near the bottom. I mean, obviously, as a Dolphins fan, I've learned to love and hate both at the same time. Sometimes Ryan Tannehill, he was one of the biggest head scratchers sometimes, and sometimes he would look like an All Pro. I think the biggest question mark with Tennessee is if they, decide, depending on how things are going, at the first half of the season, they do have Malik Willis sitting there on the bench. He looked terrible in the times where he came onto the field.
Malik Willis would not be starting in Nashville if that happened. Maybe Will Levis, the rookie from Kentucky.
Yeah, I mean they did bring in Will Levis. I mean I've heard that Malik Willis has looked better. Has made some significant strides in the offseason.
Wait a minute. So instead of not throwing the ball, he actually can throw the ball. The question is, can he throw the ball to somebody in a blue jersey?
Yeah, I mean, it was honestly one of the most mind-boggling things last year because I was interested in Malik Willis. I thought that he had some potential to not be Lamar Jackson, but to at least be a showy, fun guy to watch in the NFL. And every time I saw him come into the play, I mean, yes, you have Derrick Henry, and obviously as the Titans, you want to give the ball to Derrick Henry, but you have to let your quarterback throw it every once in a while. And I don't know if that was from the offensive coordinator, from the head coach, if they just didn't trust him to throw the ball. But I mean, he made some significant appearances last season in Ryan Tannehill's place, and they just did not let him throw the rock. So, obviously with 3 quarterbacks on the roster, unfortunately for Ryan Tannehill, I think he has a relatively short leash. They bring in DeAndre Hopkins, but Ryan Tannehill's not the quarterback of the future for the Tennessee Titans. So it makes me think, if things start getting a little rocky at the beginning of the year, do they make that change? Do they look to Malik Willis? Do they look to Will Levis? I mean, I don't know what's going to happen, obviously, but it's just a bit of a confusing situation for the Tennessee Titans. I mean, you have 2 backup young quarterbacks, a second-year quarterback and a rookie quarterback, and you have a guy who you at least make it seem like you're intending to be your starter. You bring in a top-tier wide receiver to help him. It's a weird situation all around. I do like Mike Vrabel. I mean, I think it's hard not to. He's one of the most likable head coaches in the NFL, but it's just a lot of kind of moving parts. They did lose David Long to my Miami Dolphins, who was a great middle linebacker. I'm really excited to have him contributing to the Dolphins defense this year. It's a team that I don't have a very high ceiling for. I think you said, right around the 500 mark, it's probably a good place for him. It's just Ryan Tannehill's not the guy. He's had some injuries in the past. He cannot survive when he's standing in the pocket. He really has to move to be any sort of significant threat to throw the ball downfield. I mean, the amount of sacks I've seen from Ryan Tannehill where he didn't know a guy was coming up his blind side, it's so infuriating to watch sometimes. So I don't have the highest expectations. Obviously, they have the talent in DeAndre Hopkins and Derrick Henry, but I think the rest of the supporting cast is just too big of a question mark. And really, at the end of the day, it comes down to the quarterback position. And as they said, when the Miami Dolphins had 2 offensive coordinators, if you have 2 offensive coordinators, you don't have one. The Titans have a question mark starter and they have 2 backup quarterbacks. So that tells me they don't have one backup. It's just it seems kind of like a mess, and it seems like they're getting a little desperate in Tennessee, and I don't see high hopes for them this year.
I mean, if things go bad, maybe Will Levis plays. But I mean, DeAndre Hopkins makes the Titans interesting. But even in that wonky division, we'll see. Well, from Nashville, we'll go in Indy because the Colts sure made some changes. I mean, Shane Steichen, new head coach, but maybe the biggest move was drafting Florida's Anthony Richardson with the full pick in April's draft. So I think Anthony Richardson may have the highest ceiling of any quarterback, but his floor is below the bottom of the barrel. How about you?
Yeah, I think that's a perfect assessment. I think, Anthony Richardson, obviously, he made some plays at Florida. A lot of them were with his feet, which, in today's NFL, it's a big, I mean, it's a big plus to be able to have a quarterback who can make plays on their feet. Obviously, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, they're some of the top guys in the league, and they're all able to make plays happen off on the run. So it's a big plus. It's what today's NFL is looking like these days. But at the end of the day, and we've seen him make some good throws in his pro day. We saw Zach Wilson make some good throws in his pro day, and we all know how that turned out. So I think he is, like you said, I mean, he might have one of the highest floors, but his ceiling, or one of the highest ceilings, but his floor sure is in the dirt. And it's going to be obviously the biggest question mark. They moved on from Matt Ryan, and they got Gardner Minshew. I think it's pretty safe to say that Gardner Minshew is going to be a career backup. As great as his mustache is, and as great as we've seen some spots here and there from Gardner, he's not the quarterback of the future. You don't draft Anthony Richardson thinking that Gardner Minshew is the quarterback of the future. My eyes are on Jonathan Taylor this year for the Colts. I mean, I think he was consensus number 1 in fantasy football drafts last season, and we did not see that from him. Maybe with a rookie quarterback, they want to lean on Jonathan Taylor and try and give him the ball and see if they can get, the Jonathan Taylor of 2 years ago that we all kind of assumed was the top dog. But, that's obviously yet to be seen based on, his disappointing year last year. We've got some young, talented receivers with Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce. It's an interesting team. And to be completely honest with you, I think the thing about the AFC South is it's one of the least inspiring divisions in the NFL to me. Obviously, we're going to talk about the Jaguars here shortly, and I think they're pretty much the consensus one for most people in this division. But other than that, whether it's the Texans, the Titans, or the Colts, they're all kind of in the same range to me, where it's not a team that I'd put money on to make a playoff run. It's not a team that none of those 3 teams are really any team that excites me. Anything other than the couple names that they have on their rosters. So the Colts, they give me a very similar vibe to the Titans this year. It's there's a lot of question marks, and there's potential for things to go well. Same with the Atlanta Falcons that we said in the top half of this episode. There's a lot of questions, and things could go either really well or really bad for them.
I think it also depends on how healthy Michael Pittman is, because he didn't look like himself last year. Pittman was a big-time best ball. Everybody wanted him in dynasty, redraft, and he was a big bust, but maybe that was Matt Ryan looking like he was about 98 years old. But.
Yeah. We didn't see a lot from Matt Ryan. They obviously had to make a move, and it's like I said, Gardner Minshew is a career backup, and you've got a rookie with anything could happen with him. So I think the Colts are an interesting team. It's just not a very good division. I think it's a pretty clear cut who wins this division this year. And, the other 3 teams are kind of interchangeable to me in the sense of a team that's not going to excite me, and it's a team that I don't see really making very many moves this year. But let's move on. Let's go down to Houston and talk about, if we have to, the Houston Texans. I think
Houston, we have a problem.
Yeah, Houston, we definitely have a problem. I think it's a team that's been looking up for quite some time now. I see some people saying that they'll be better than they were last year. I think it's hard not to be. The Houston Texans fumbled their way out of a number 1 overall pick. They shot themselves in the foot, and it's a team I don't think we have to spend too much time talking about, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on the team that might very well be the bottom dweller of the AFC this year.
I like me some D'Amico Ryans. I mean, at least he'll bring some stability. I mean, if the Houston Texans fire D'Amico Ryans after 1 year, then I don't know what's going on, but that's a story for another day. CJ Stroud's interesting because he was the number 2 pick. What's with all the rookie quarterbacks today?
Yeah.
But CJ Stroud, I mean, talk about Alabama quarterbacks not seeing the NFL. The last time I saw a quarterback from the Ohio State succeed was never.
Yeah. I mean, unless you want to count Joe Burrow.
Okay.
Wait, you said
Yeah,
USC.
the Ohio State.
Yeah, Ohio State. I mean, if you want to count Joe Burrow, I mean, you can have that one. But I think everyone considers him a little bit more LSU.
Yeah, I think he did okay at LSU.
Say so myself.
But I think it depends on how well CJ Stroud played because Tex made a big move on draft night, not just in CJ Stroud, but then trading a first round pick in 2024 to get Will Anderson. So if this Texan season goes well, the Houston Texans look like geniuses. If this season goes bad, potentially gave the Arizona Cardinals the number 1 and 2 picks, which means they could take Caleb Williams and old Marvin Harrison Jr., the wide receiver from guess where?
The
Ohio State
University.
And then, I mean, D'Amico Ryan's played linebacker for the Texans. They love him. I think he'll be competent. I mean, yeah, he's a defense-minded coach, but he'll bring stability. He'll bring leadership. He'll bring forwardness. And at least the Texans made – I like some of the moves Texans made. Getting Rob Woods. Getting Dalton Schultz from the Cowboys. Getting who was the I can't think of the safety name from the Niners.
I can't remember either.
Jimmy Ward, thank you.
There it is. Yeah.
But I like some of the moves Tex made. Obviously, it's going to depend on Stroud, but I mean they've got some pieces. I mean Robert Woods, Nico Collins, Damian Pierce,
Yeah.
Devin Singletary. So Texans aren't going to be doing that. Will they challenge for the division title? Probably not. But will Houston be the worst team in the AFC? Probably not. I mean, I see them as a potential 6-7 win team.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely looking better for them than it has, last season. But the problem is the AFC is just so stacked. They're in a decent division to be able to pull out a couple wins, and I think that they'll probably get, I'd say a chunk out of their wins, from the Colts or from the Titans even potentially. Who knows? They could even beat Jacksonville. We've seen some crazy upsets in that division in the past, but it's just like you said, they're looking better. It's not a team that really I'm gonna have my eyes on too much. I don't see them as a threat in the AFC for sure. Potentially they can win a couple games that people don't see coming just on youth, stepping up and learning a thing or two maybe. But they're a yawn team. It's a team that I really don't expect much out of, and I don't really, have a very high ceiling for. But like you said, they made some good moves and they've improved the roster for sure. They've got D'Amico Ryans come in, but it's just not a team that I really, would put too much money on, for anything other than mediocrity throughout the season. But I think
okay, go ahead.
I think it's time. I think we made Dylan wait long enough. We've covered 7 teams so far throughout the South on the AFC and NFC side of the ball. So I'm going to let Dylan have his time. I think across the NFL, the probable 100% favorites to win this division, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Dylan, what do you see out of your boys from Duval for the upcoming 2023 NFL season?
I'm just thinking. Wait. Somebody pinch me. Who's the quarterback for the Jags again?
I think that might be Blonde Jesus or Trevor Lawrence, maybe.
Actually, my mother calls Trevor Lawrence Fabio.
Fabio, there you go. That'll do.
But I think this Jag team has got more expectations than any other team I can remember, even that 2018 team after the Saxonville season. But for the first time really since the Mark Manel time, the Jaguars have a top 5'6" quarterback in football, and a team capable of not just contending in the AFC, but making a deep playoff run. Are the Jags good enough to make a Super Bowl, especially in a crowded AFC where they're all 10, 11 teams capable of making the playoffs? Probably not, but could the Jags end up with the number one seed based on the vision, all these home games with Kansas City, Cincinnati, Baltimore, San Francisco, Buffalo game in London? Perhaps. And I mean, Tennessee ended up with a number one seed 2 years ago. But Jacksonville could well end up with one seed. Plus, even you look at the divisional games. Trevor Lawrence, the only guy you feel confident going in the game with. I mean, Anthony Richardson, C.J. Stroud, Ryan Tannehill. Good lord.
Yeah, I think you did a great job covering it. I mean, I think it's the only relevant team in the AFC South that has a chance of making any moves. The Jaguars, they can go as far as Trevor Lawrence will take them. They obviously made a playoff run last season that I don't think a lot of people expected. Obviously, with the comeback, they had a great game against Kansas City, which was a lot closer than I think people expected as well. I mean, they were close to an AFC Championship game last year. I think they're clear cut to win the division. They might even sweep the division and get 6 games alone just from divisional games. I think it's a high possibility. I think their roster, their coaching, their quarterback play obviously is far and away the best combination of any of that in the AFC South. The main problem and really the only detractor that I see for the Jacksonville Jaguars is the fact that they play in the AFC. You're going to have to eventually come up with the Kansas City Chiefs, the Baltimore Ravens, the Miami Dolphins, even potentially the New York Jets, the Cincinnati Bengals, the LA Chargers. I mean, it's just the AFC is so stacked with such talent that someone unfortunately is going to be on an early exit as far as the playoffs go, or even be on one of the first couple teams out to miss the playoffs this season. Like you said, there's 11 potential teams, maybe more, maybe less, but the AFC is stacked. The Jacksonville Jaguars are very clearly, I think it's pretty obvious they're going to win the AFC South this year, unless something happens to Trevor. Knock on wood, but the way that the Jaguars are set up in the AFC South, it's their division to take. I think it'll be relatively straightforward to take that division, and really it just comes down to winning your conference games throughout the regular season. When you play against, it doesn't matter if you're playing against the Patriots or the Bills. It doesn't matter if you're playing against, the Browns or the Chiefs. You have to win those conference games, because if you can get any sort of advantage you can get going into the playoffs this season, you're going to need it, because you don't want to go into Arrowhead. You don't want to go into, the Bengals, go play Joe Burrow away. As many opportunities as you can to take any sort of advantage you can into those playoffs, you have to be able to take it if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, because yes, you have a talented team. Yes, you have a rising, very quickly quarterback who potentially has MVP potential, but there's a lot of that already in the AFC. So the big thing for the Jaguars, like I said, this season is winning those conference games, winning those divisional games, and really racking up as many tiebreakers as possible so that you can have the smoothest path to the AFC Championship as you can, because they have the potential to get there, but so do a lot of teams. And obviously, I didn't even mention the Miami Dolphins. So, it's a loaded AFC. I think the Jaguars are by far the team to win the AFC South, but for the Jaguars, their goal isn't to win the AFC South this season. They've done that. They've been there. They've done that. The Jaguars significantly have an opportunity to make some moves this season, and I'm sure you're hoping for it. I'm sure you're confident in the team, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of heavyweights in that AFC, and you got to bring it all, and you got to bring your best to be able to stand up with the rest of them. But of course, throughout the AFC South, they're definitely the team that has the best chance to make it happen. I'm really excited to watch Calvin Ridley this year. A year off of that suspension, from gambling. Travis Etienne, I love watching him. He's one of my favorite running backs to watch in the NFL. And they've got the weapons. It's just a matter of putting yourself in the right situation and putting yourself in the right place to make a playoff run. Because at the end of the day, making the playoffs isn't enough for the Jaguars. You really got to go as deep as you possibly can.
I think there are two questions with the Jags this year. One, will the offensive line play well enough with Trevor Lawson running for his life? And two, how will Calvin Ridley's inclusion help this team? Because we saw last year Trevor got Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, Evan Ingram. By the way, congrats on Evan Ingram getting paid today.
Yep.
One day before the franchise tag deadline for franchise players. But I mean, we saw what happened when Jamal Chase missed the whole 2020 college football season. He looked like Jamal Chase. So I'm hoping Calvin Ridley is back. He's only 28, so it's not like he fell off the cliff. It's not like he came back from a torn Achilles. He just didn't play.
Yeah.
So I think Calvin Ridley will be fine.
He can still be in the gym. He can still be working out. He can still be catching balls. It's not limiting his ability. It's just unfortunately limiting his time to be in live game action, which is a lot when it comes to the NFL because there's no replicating live football. But I think he's good enough. I think he's good enough. And I'm sorry for kind of taking your statement here, but I think he's a good enough talent. He's a good enough receiver, and he's an NFL veteran at this point in his career. He's been playing for football for a long time, and I think being able to come in and join Trevor Lawrence, it's going to be a fun duo to watch.
So ultimately, who wins the NFC and AFC South?
I think as far as the AFC South goes, it speaks for itself. I think the Jacksonville Jaguars, I could see them going as high as 12 wins regular season. I think if the pieces really click, the Jacksonville Jaguars could be a force in the AFC this season. I think more realistically, I'm looking at about 10 to 11 wins. But I think the Jags very easily take the AFC South. As far as the NFC South, it's an interesting division. I think a couple teams can really make some moves to make things happen. I think, I know you said I know where you're going as far as this goes. I have to give it to the Saints. I like the talent on the Saints. I like Derek Carr. I think he's got a point to prove after being kicked out of Vegas so disrespectfully. I love the Alvin Kamara and Jamal Williams 1-2 punch. I love Chris Olave and the receiver core. Who knows if we'll see Michael Thomas again, but Chris Olave has already taken over as the number one option in New Orleans. I think the Saints go and take the NFC South.
I think it's scratch fever. I think the Panthers win the NFC South, and I don't want to jinx in the NFC South, but you know where I'm going.
Yeah. All right, we'll see. We love to agree to disagree, Dylan, and it comes right back today. I think the AFC South was a lock, but we'll see 17 weeks later how our NFC South predictions take care of it.
All right, Alex, thanks for hopping on, and we'll be talking your Dolphins eventually.
Yeah, can't wait to get into the east side of things, man. It's a great division this year, and I got to talk my Fins up, baby.